serial killer Edmund Kemper bludgeoned his mom, beheaded her, and humiliated her, his words, by placing her head on a shelf, screamed at it for an hour, and threw darts at it. He then cut out her tongue and larynx and put them down the garbage disposal. In the 1940s, a man named John George Haig, also known as the acid bath murderer, dissolved the bodies of his victims in acid to destroy evidence. The Granny Ripper was a nickname given to Tamara Samsonova, a Russian woman who killed and dismembered at least 11 people, including her own husband. The Lipstick Killer was a moniker given to William Herons, who confessed to a series of murders in the 1940s and left behind messages scrawled in lipstick at the crime scenes. Colombian serial killer Pedro Lopez killed over 300 girls. In the 2006 edition of the Guinness World Records, they named him the most prolific serial killer, and he was released on $50 bail in 1998. He is currently a free man, although he is technically a fugitive of Colombian justice. During the Paris resistance against German troops in 1942, wanted French serial killer Marcel Petiot grew a beard and joined using the alias Henri Valéry, who then became Captain Valéry. Valéry was then assigned to find Petiot until someone finally recognized him. Quebec City, Canada is one of the safest cities in all of Canada. It has the same crime rate as Disney World. Hustler magazine founder Larry Flint actually survived an attack by a serial killer, Joseph Franklin. The incident caused him to be paralyzed from the waist down. Italian serial killer Leonardo Cianciulli was known as the soap maker of Correggio. She was a cannibal and famously turned her victims into soap and tea cakes. 19th century serial killer H.H. Holmes opened a hotel specifically for murder. It included soundproof rooms, trapdoors, 2 incinerators, and walls lined with blowtorches. Russian serial killer Andrei Chikatilo actually helped solve cases. While Soviet police were trying to catch Chikatilo, they ended up solving more than 1,000 unrelated crimes, including 95 murders and 245 assaults. Richard Chase, commonly known as the Vampire of Sacramento, believed that he was indeed a vampire. He would kill and cannibalize his victims. He was a paranoid schizophrenic and a necrophiliac, and blamed his murders on Nazi UFOs. Homes with no alarm system are 300% more likely to be burglarized than homes with one. By the way, that's an actual Ring camera photo. There is no waiting period for reporting a child or an adult missing. This is from Child Find America, Inc. and State of California. The first 48 hours are critical in successfully locating a missing person. Charles Ingalls was the real-life Pa depicted on TV's Little House on the Prairie. The real-life Laura Ingalls said that Pa Ingalls had secretly killed a family of murderers in Kansas. When it was brought up, Pa would say, "They'll never be found." In 1980, Joseph Christopher tried to admit himself to the Buffalo Psychiatric Center. He was denied entry. That same month, he went on a killing spree, killing 3 men in the span of 36 hours. He killed 12 people. 7 of them survived. The United States of America is the world leader in incarceration. Yay us. a man faced felony charges after releasing a dozen heart-shaped balloons for his wife. He was charged with polluting to harm humans, animals, and plants. It's punishable up to 5 years in prison. Yes, it was in Florida. A study was conducted by the Chicago Tribune that found certain crimes increase when the temperatures rise. They decrease as it gets cooler. In 1977, lethal injection officially became the new form of execution in the U.S., except in Washington, New Hampshire, and Delaware. A serial killer in San Francisco in the 1970s was named the Doodler. He was never caught. He targeted gay men and would sketch them nude before murdering them. 3 men survived, but they weren't willing to out themselves in open court. Apparently, over 20 states in the U.S. do not have a law against necrophilia. There's also no federal law against it. So, if you want to have sex with the dead, you may need to relocate. They were known as the Hart brothers, and possibly the first serial killers in the U.S. During the late 1700s, it is estimated they killed 25 to 40 people or more. The most dangerous cities in the U.S. are Detroit, Memphis, etc. 5th on the list was Anchorage, Alaska, which kind of flies in the face of the Chicago Tribune study, doesn't it? In 2011, a nasty custody battle in Eastlake, Ohio, led to Christine Metter hiring a hitman to take out her ex-husband. Little problem. The hitman was an undercover police officer. Jennifer Pan was the daughter of Vietnamese immigrants in Canada. She was living a lie. Her family was very upset when they learned that she hadn't been in pharmacology school. Jennifer and her boyfriend killed her mom and almost killed her dad. She's now in jail for life. It took Sandra Boss 11 years to discover that her husband wasn't a Rockefeller. His real name is Christian Gerhardsstreiter, a German immigrant, and no relation to the Rockefeller fortune. Oh yeah, and he had killed before. In 1922, Dolly Oesterreich told Southern California police that her husband was killed by a burglar. Case closed. 9 years later, when she broke it off with her boyfriend, he confessed to being the one who killed Dolly's husband. They both got away with it. We are statistically safer than before. The FBI's crime report shows that violent crime in the U.S. dropped 48% between 1993 and 2016. Think that cell pinging and millions of cameras watching have anything to do with it? In 1976, 70-year-old Blanche Kimball was brutally killed in her Augusta, Maine home. 34 years later, a homeless man in Seattle was asked to join a chewing gum survey. His DNA was a match to the Kimball murderer. In 2003, Robert Kissel was poisoned and beaten to death by his wife, Nancy. In 2006, Robert's brother Andrew was found dead in his basement, hands and feet bound. The crimes were not related. 53-year-old Dwight was friendly and helpful to his elderly 92-year-old neighbor, Helen. She read a lot into his kindness. When Dwight rejected her advances, Helen began firing a .380 semi-automatic handgun at his house. The tragic kidnapping and murder of 12-year-old Polly Klaas led to California's 3 strikes law. If the law had been in place in 1993, Richard Allen Davis would not have been able to kidnap and kill her. Contrary to popular belief, Charles Manson did shoot someone. He shot Bernard Crowe over drug money. When arrested for the Sharon Tate murders, he included Crowe as one of his victims. Unbeknownst to Manson, Crowe was still alive. 5 years after his house was burglarized, Deputy Ricky Buchanan was categorizing stolen goods from burglary suspects when he found his stolen Fiore brand TV. Pamela Bass was friendly with all her neighbors. Once, a neighbor offered her a sandwich, and the two ate together. Shortly after that, her neighbor, Jeffrey Dahmer, was arrested. Ew. From 1880 to 1902, Joseph Brigham was a California hog farmer who always won blue ribbons at the state fair. "It's all in the feeding," he would say proudly. Turns out that he had been feeding homeless and transient men to his hogs for years. Albert Fish was an American serial killer, rapist, child molester, and cannibal in the late 1920s. At least 10 plus victims. During his trial, a psychiatrist said that Fish was the most deranged human being. You think? Don't act surprised, but a Florida woman and her caterer thought it would be a cute prank to lace all of the food at her wedding with marijuana. Her guests were very upset. Not only was it not a cute prank, recreational use of marijuana is illegal in Florida. The two face felony charges. Spain's first documented serial killer, Manuel Rosasanta, was raised as a girl until he was 6 years old because his parents thought he was a girl. I don't get this one. Did they not change his diaper? In early 2023, Corey Richens published a children's book on grief after her husband had died in 2022. On May 9, 2023, Corey was arrested for using fentanyl to murder her husband. In October 2022, 55-year-old Rory Wood arrived at a protest wearing a beekeeper suit. She then began shaking the crates filling her van, letting the bees out and angering them. She was immediately handcuffed and taken into custody. If you like this kind of thing, true crime, 12-year-old humor, crazy stuff, oh, and facts, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the bell thingy so you don't miss the next one. In 1922, at the Hinterkaifeck farm in Groburn, Germany, the entire Gruber family, including their new maid, were massacred. There were maybe 2 strangers secretly living in their attic for months before the murders and after. It remains unsolved to this day. Former British doctor Harold Shipman, also known as Dr. Death, was documented to have murdered at least 250 of his patients over the years. He may have actually killed as many as 459 people in total. Modern comedians literally owe their freedom to the late, great Lenny Bruce. In his 1964 trial, Bruce was convicted of public indecency and obscenity for telling jokes in a freaking comedy club. Serial killer Jake Bird placed what he called a bird hex on anyone attending his trial. He said, "Mark my words, you will die before I do." 6 of those people died following the court case. The now infamous Golden State Killer was a seriously messed up dude. He would undress and stand in the doorway of victims' bedrooms, tapping and scraping his knife along the doorframe until they woke up. In addition to violent crime decreasing, property crimes have too. Statistics from the FBI show that property crimes dropped by more than 50% from 1993 to 2017. Go on, go ahead and celebrate. Many don't realize that Joseph DeAngelo, the Golden State Killer, was a police officer for years. In Exeter, California, down by Fresno, he was actually put in charge of finding himself. In Newington, Connecticut, a man broke into a gas station, stole a single banana, casually ate it, and then drove away. He didn't even try to conceal his face, and he took nothing else. I mean, I've heard of hangry before, but according to experts, serial killers have 4 types of kills. 1, they're mission-oriented. 2, they're visionary. 3, they're control-oriented. 4, they're hedonistic. Of course, there are combination killings. The famous Hillside Stranglers, Angelo Buono Jr. and Kenneth Bianchi, were active in Los Angeles in the late 1970s. Planning to murder a girl, they discovered that her father was famous actor Peter Lorre. They didn't want to attract more attention, so they let her go free. A Florida man attacked his girlfriend with a banana. He countered, saying that his girlfriend attacked him with a banana. Well, it was he who was arrested for domestic violence and resisting arrest, probably with a banana. Remember, folks, these are true crime facts. South Carolina serial killer Pee Wee Gaskins used to drive around in his hearse with a bumper sticker that said that he was hauling dead bodies. Sounds made up, but it isn't. The Menendez brothers used to write murder mysteries before their arrest. One screenplay was called Friends, about a boy who kills his parents. They even updated the script to match what they had done. A man in Pennsylvania, wait, shouldn't that be Florida? Wanted to get away from his wife so much that he tried to rob a bank using an unloaded gun. Police granted his wish, and he was sentenced to prison. There was a serial killer from the 1980s to the 2000s with the name Looney. Looney David Franklin Jr., there was another guy with that name, was arrested in 2010 after his DNA matched 10 victims. This might come as a shock, but a Florida man robbed a house so hard that he decided to take a nap. The owner found him sleeping on his couch and called police. He was promptly arrested. Well, durr. In 2008, Ricky Simons Sr. planned to kill his ex-girlfriend, so he hid in the trunk of her car to ambush her. He ended up passing out inside, and he died of heat stroke. The karma comes from he probably killed his son's fiancée. A member of the Manson family is out of prison as of July 11, 2023, after more than 50 years of a life sentence. At the time, Leslie Van Houten proudly admitted to stabbing Rosemary LaBianca more than a dozen times in her lower back. A mother of a missing boy pleaded with her son on TV to return home, promising that she'd get him his favorite food, KFC, if he came home. When her son's body was found, his stomach contents showed that his last meal was indeed KFC. And that's just sad. A man put a yoga ball filled with carbon monoxide in his wife's car for a reason. It deflated, killing his wife and his daughter, his entire family. This is a guy who needs to be beaten every day in prison. An Argentinian TV station sent a gang of wrestlers to the airport to kidnap the Beatles. Yes, the Beatles. They mistakenly grabbed a cover band called the Beatles. Think they wrestled with their decision? On July 19, 2023, London Metropolitan Police apologized to the family of Daniel Morgan, who was killed with an axe 36 years ago in a pub parking lot. They are sorry for the failure to bring those responsible to justice. That's polite. On Monday, July 17, 2023, Las Vegas police executed a search warrant on a home in connection with the drive-by shooting and murder of Tupac Shakur in 1996. It's the first movement on the case in many years. Illinois police are examining new DNA evidence discovered in the infamous Tylenol murders of 1982. It's possible that we may finally know who has eluded capture for over 40 years and is also responsible for the annoying to open medicine caps of today. Career violent criminal Jesse Calhoun has been named a person of interest in the recent murders of 4 young women in Oregon. Reportedly, he has links to the victims. The top 5 safest colleges in the United States: Concordia, St. Paul, Minnesota; Bay Path, Longmeadow, Massachusetts; Geneva, but it's in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania; Penn State, Center Valley, Pennsylvania; and Joyce, Draper, Utah. Wonder where they rank on the party school list. Vlado Teneski was a Macedonian freelance journalist and crime reporter who covered a serial killer from 2005 to 2008. He had an inside scoop. You see, Teneski was, in fact, that very serial killer. Arthur Shawcross was imprisoned for arson. He helped save a prison guard during a riot, so he was released after only 22 months. He then went on to murder 14 people, including cannibalizing some of them. Male nurse Richard Angelo didn't feel that he was getting the recognition that he deserved, so he began injecting patients with Pavilon, killing 25 people in 1987. Convicted killer Otis Toole, and yes, that's how he spells it, murdered at least 6 people. When he was younger, his grandmother took him on grave-robbing expeditions and taught him rituals like self-mutilation. Surprise, surprise, a Florida man, while wearing the shirt above, was arrested for possession of drugs. Don't ever need to make things up here in the Florida section. A Florida man used a private plane, no word on whether he stole it or not, to create some art using radar. His actual artwork is shown above. Pay full attention. Blondie's Deborah Harry hailed a cab in New York City in the early 1970s. A man pulled up and she got in. She instantly got a bad vibe, jumping out in the middle of the street. She swears it was none other than Ted Bundy. According to Guinness Book of Records, author Agatha Christie, with her 70-plus crime novels and short stories, is the best-selling fiction writer of all time. Some estimate 2 to 4 billion copies have sold. California serial killer Mac Edwards buried his victims where he knew there would be new freeways and on and off ramps. See, in the 50s and 60s, he was a heavy equipment operator for Caltrans. A burglary occurs every 30 seconds. Burglaries typically happen during the day. Burglaries happen in rural areas the most. Burglaries are actually decreasing